Hello, and welcome to the Better Late Than Never podcast. I'm doing audio only this time just because I look atrocious. Um, with these podcasts, I really don't know. I don't have topics planned. I just go off the top of my head and just talk about whatever um, I feel like talking about. Right now, I don't want to put too much time into it. I'm sure most of you are very aware of the situation that's happening in Ukraine right now. Um, the conflict between Putin and the Ukrainian people. I don't even want to say the Russian people and the Ukrainian people. I really feel like this is a very specific conflict with Putin, Vladimir Putin, and Ukraine. From what I understand, and I'm not the most informed on the situation, I'm not this isn't a news podcast, so I'm not going to go into too much detail. But from the impression that I understand from people I know who live in Europe, most Russians don't want this to be happening. Um, Even Russian soldiers who are stationed and invading Ukraine aren't really getting the right information, are being lied to, or being misdirected about their objectives. Um, if you go on Reddit, you'll see a lot of videos of units surrendering. Um, it seems like no one really wants war to happen. Like this is a very insane scenario, especially by our standards today. Um, and my heart goes out to the Ukrainian people. Um, my heart goes out to uh, people who live in Russia. Um, my heart goes out to soldiers on both sides, both the Ukrainian soldiers who are fighting to defend their country, and certain Russian soldiers who may not really be well informed on what they're doing, or are receiving the wrong type of information, or are being gaslit about their objectives and things of that nature. Um, so it's a very insane scenario. I feel bad for Russian people whose lives are being uprooted and whose livelihoods are being heavily affected by the sanctions that are happening. Um, because like I said, it seems like there's very little morale behind Putin's actions. I almost don't even want to call it the Russian army. I almost just want to call it Putin's army, um, because it doesn't seem like he's getting very little support aside from just like his own circle of people, or a very select few group of people. Um, so I just wanted to express just really quickly, this is a very tense situation over there. My heart goes out to um, both sides. It does not go out to Putin in the slightest, because he's essentially the one initiating all this. But for the innocent people who are suffering from this, from the soldiers who are being misinformed about their intentions, um, to the lives that have been lost, um, just my heart goes out to them. Um, so aside from that, because I'm sure you're all pretty well aware of that, I can't think, unless you're living under a rock, or you just completely disconnect from the news and social media in general. Um, I wanted to kind of talk about just certain things going on with me. I so I was thinking about the idea of being productive, and how we tend to, or at least how I tend to hold myself to like a certain standard when it comes to productivity. And I think a huge part of being productive in general involves listening to your body and listening to yourself and understanding the rhythms that you intuitively want to follow to get things done. So what I mean by that is like I I recently started working out right before bed. And not like weightlifting. In the house I live in, I have a little weight set with like a bench press, and it's got like a squat rack, and then like I got some weights on there. Um, it's such a horrible segue to talk from like a travesty that's happening in Europe to just my completely subjective problems. But like I said, I don't want to go into too much detail about that. Um, but anyway, I started working out right before bed. So I would do like just a lot of calisthenic stuff like squats, push-ups, and stretching. Oh my God. I always knew stretching was important, and I've always tried to keep myself limber and flexible by stretching on a regular basis, but specifically in the heat. But I find that doing some light exercise before I go to bed actually helps me sleep easier. I'm the type of person who it takes me a long time to fall asleep. Like I can lay in bed for like nearly an hour or 2 hours before I'll just sort of drift off most of the time. Sometimes it kind of just depends on what I do throughout the day, but generally speaking, it takes me a long time to actually fall asleep. And I don't know what it is, but I guess just working out tires my brain and my body out enough that I actually feel like yes, I can doze off now. Um, and that's an interesting thing because I do remember when I was in my early 20s. I'm 28 right now. In my early 20s, I would go to I used to work at a gym, but then I joined a Gold's Gym because they were 24 hours. The gym I worked at closed, at a certain time. And obviously I was working, so I can't work out while I'm working. So I would go to Gold's Gym and I would just do a bunch of weightlifting from like, geez, I get there around like 10:30 at night, and then I'd probably work out until like 1 in the morning. And I don't know what it is. I've always been a night owl, but something about I just have so much more energy at night. Um, I don't know if that, and I think part of that might be just because we think of it as like, oh, that's so abnormal. Like people are usually out and about doing stuff in the day. Why do you have more energy at night than during the day? And I think it's just because when there's a certain period of time where there's nothing else to do, it's like late at night, you can't really go anywhere unless you want to go to like a club. But I mean, on a weekday, who wants to go to a club? And, um, places are closed or closing. So I don't know. It's just sort of like late at night. It's like there's nothing else to distract you. Like all you have to do at this point in time is whatever the thing is you're trying to do. Um, I find that I'm more creative at nighttime. I can focus a little more on things like artwork and stuff like that at nighttime. So it's weird. It's just like that's like a time of genuine introspection for me. Um, and so I'll just get stuff done late at night and I have so much more energy. If I try to go to a Gold's Gym during the middle of the day and work out for 3 hours, like after about an hour, I'm just gonna not feel like doing it. I'm gonna feel like there's something else I could be doing right now. I think during the day, there's a myriad of things that you could do instead of focusing on one specific thing. And I personally am a believer of the philosophy of you know, I'm a believer of the philosophy and doing a little bit at a time builds up. So, a little here, a little there. Um, it doing a bunch of small things builds up as long as you're doing them consistently. So I don't want to blow like 3 hours of my day working out when there's other things I could do. Well, at nighttime, it's like, well, there's nothing else to do. So also that makes me think of, I remember when I was a kid, um, I would stay up late so I could watch Adult Swim because, I mean, I just would stay up late, and by that time my mom would go to bed, so I would just turn on the TV and just watch Adult Swim. And I think that conditioned me to just be more engaged with things at nighttime. I don't know if it might be further than that. Like certain patterns, I think we carry over from not just our childhoods, but also our infancy. I've been told as an infant, and as a toddler, um, I tended to stay up late just because of my parents' work schedules and stuff. But certain things like that carry over. Um, and that's why I think it's so important to, if you're trying to figure out, I feel like, and maybe I'm just slow witted when it comes to understanding this stuff, but if you're having trouble with understanding a certain tendency that you have or a certain pattern that you tend to fall into, consider what you were like when you were younger. Consider your childhood. What was your childhood like, and or your early adolescence like, and how would that have shaped into the mannerisms that you have now? Um, I don't think, and it's weird because as you get older, your childhood really starts to kind of vanish. Like you forget a lot of things. And then you start to blame recent events for like the reason that you do this, that, or the other. And obviously recent events have a huge aspect to it, but I think things that happen to us when we're very, very young stick with us for a very long period of time, longer than we really think they do. It's a weird switch. It's interesting how like my chair is kind of squeaky, so, you know, it's interesting how we will assume once we hit like a certain age, like, I don't know, maybe not early 20s, maybe like mid 20s, you know, and it can vary for people, everyone's different. But for me, when I hit my like mid 20s, maybe early 20s, I can't remember. There's a point where you kind of feel this detachment from your childhood and your adolescence. You're like, I'm not that person I was anymore. I'm completely different. Everything about me is different. And it's like, not everything is going to be different. Like there's a term, a psychological term, and I don't remember. I remember reading it in a book, but I can't remember what it's called. But it basically just proves like certain mannerisms that you have in your childhood and like developing years do carry on into your adult years. And they can carry on as far as maybe your 30s or 40s. So, yeah. And I think that's interesting because, like, we think about, I do remember, and maybe this is just me, maybe this is other people as well. I remember I went through like for lack of a better term, maybe like a nostalgia crisis. Um, when I was early 20s, like, if you've ever seen Toy Story 3 or if you've ever watched the Toy Story series, I remember when I saw Toy Story 3, um the scene when when Andy's gonna give away his toys to the little girl, and she reaches up to grab Woody, and he like recoils a little bit and he like pulls back just for a second, and he's like, that I saw that movie when I was uh whenever it came out. Like I think I saw it. Did I see it in theaters? I don't remember if I saw it in theaters, but probably didn't. At that point in time, I probably wouldn't have even gone out to see a movie, period. But I saw that, and I think I did cry. I did start to have like tears a little bit welling up. Um, and it's interesting because we think of that as like so childish, so silly. Like, why are you clinging to this thing? you're an adult now. Why are you clinging to your childhood and your adolescence? Like, what's the what you know? And I don't think that's silly. I don't think there's anything silly about that, because your childhood really does shape who you tend to become. It really does. And we take a lot of that for granted, or we underestimate how much of an impact our childhoods and our adolescence has on us. But when you try to separate yourself from that and you try to be like, oh, I'm going to develop new hobbies and I'm going to completely change the nature of who I am as I become an adult, it's like you lose a part of yourself. And then you become like in your late 20s and early 30s and you don't have any hobbies, and you because you're so busy pursuing this idea of the ideal adult life or the ideal mindset of an adult. And obviously, yeah, as you get older, things are going to change. Your outlook and your perspective on things are going to change. But then we always want to throw in that term like, I'm more mature. And it's like, what is maturity? Like, there's so many levels of what maturity is. You can be academically mature. You can get your homework done. You can study. You can plan your time out well to get stuff done in that regard. But you could be horribly emotionally immature. You could fly off the handles at the slightest thing. You could be financially mature and be very responsible with your money and, just very careful with all that. But then you could also be, I guess, physically immature in the sense of like you don't understand your own body's mechanisms. You get sick and you don't understand why, or like you don't. You'll work yourself to the point where you are physically ill, but you can't think about that because you're so caught up in whatever you're doing. I don't know. There's levels of maturity. Being an adult and being older doesn't automatically make you mature. Um, it just gives you experience that could reinforce the areas you are mature in, but it doesn't make you overall mature. I have friends who talk about like they want to date somebody who is mature. And it's like, what does that mean though? You want to date somebody who will take care of you because you can't take care of yourself? Like, you want to date somebody who is financially mature? You want to date someone who's emotionally mature? What does maturity mean to you? You know? And then people say, oh, well, that's childish, or this thought process is childish, or what you're doing is childish. And it's like, what is, if a child does, is it like, what does that mean? To say like, oh, this is childish because only a child would do this? This is childish because it's immature? Things like that. I don't know. I don't know. The point is, we we tend to take our childhoods and the way they shape us, we tend to try to ignore those or make those seem irrelevant as we get older, when those things really do matter. And you start to realize that when you find yourself in therapy, talking to a psychiatrist, and you're going over stuff that happened to you when you were when you were a child. Like, I mean, I imagine a lot of psychotherapeutic sessions do tend to dig deep into childhoods. Not all of them, obviously, but that is a technique. And it works because, yeah, your childhood has a lot to do with who you tend to become and how you perceive the world and what mannerisms carry over. So, oh, this is to say, go watch Toy Story 3. That movie is, when did that movie come out? Like 2000, it had to have been 2013. I want to say 13, but then I also kind of want to say 15. Somewhere between 2013 and 2015. I'm almost positive it was that time frame. Um, but yeah, so staying up late to watch Adult Swim carried over into my adult life. So I just tend to stay up late. I force myself to go to bed because I gotta go to classes in the morning and stuff. But Uh, I miss Adult Swim. I'm so happy that Smiling Friends is on Adult Swim. I think I love Zach Hadel. I think he is absolutely, he's one of the funniest people on the planet, in my opinion. He is hilarious. And if you haven't seen Smiling Friends, I highly recommend you go watch it. I think it's still, by the time this podcast comes out, I don't know. On a lot of things could change, like the situation in Ukraine could be different by the time this comes out. Um, a lot of things, because I don't really post these the same day I record them. Um, but if you haven't seen Smiling Friends, I think it might still be available on Adult Swim's website for free. Um, but just to go on like a little nostalgia trip, I just thinking about stuff I used to watch when I was a kid. I definitely I remember like old animes. I think was Adult Swim when I first was introduced to anime? No, when was I first? Because I do remember as a kid, I read much more manga than I watched anime. Um, I think I preferred manga, and I still to this day would rather sit down and read a manga than watch an anime. Specifically because a manga you're seeing the artists their actual skill. Like you're seeing this is what they did. Obviously, bigger mangas are going to have assistants and other people helping, but especially in the initial point, you're seeing the skill of that uh, artist, and it's just right there. It's not getting processed through a team of animators who are just kind of replicating it for the sake of, the animation. It's like, no, this is the artist's actual work. And I appreciated that. Also, with manga, you can just read at your own pace. Um, you can skip parts that you don't want to read. You can kind of, for me, I'm a silly boy, so I like to do voices when I read manga. Not so much now, but definitely when I was a kid. Maybe sometimes now and then when I'm just bored. But um, just doing voices and stuff like that. With anime, you're kind of stuck there. You're kind of like you gotta watch this. You can kind of tune it out, I guess. But if you don't speak Japanese and you're watching a sub, you kind of have to you're more inclined to pay attention to what's happening because you're reading what's happening. Um, and so you're kind of stuck watching the whole thing even if nothing's happening. Whereas in manga, it's like, oh, nothing's happening. I'm just gonna skip all this dialogue, move on to something actually happening. Um, I'm not a big fan of very talky storytelling in general. Um, I don't. Soap operas are probably the bane of my existence. They're just it's all dialogue. I like. I don't know. I see manga and anime and things like that. Movies. Those are visual mediums. You watch an anime. You read a manga. You're. So when there's too much like stagnation of like, oh, we're just, I don't know. I don't know. I don't really know what I know what I'm trying to say. I just don't know how to articulate it very well. Basically, I just don't like watching stuff. I think that's what it comes down to is I just don't watch things anymore. Um, I didn't want, and I think that's, well, I can't say that was always a thing because as a kid, I would definitely watch anime that was on Adult Swim and Toonami and stuff like that. And just to jump down that rabbit hole, um, I remember just to list some stuff I remember watching. The, you know what? The first thing that comes to mind is Big O. Did anyone else see that? Did anyone else watch Big O on Adult Swim? I never. It's weird because like that show was on, and I do remember kind of glancing at it here and there, but I never really watched it. Watched it, but it's like whenever I think anime on Adult Swim, it's the first thing that comes to mind. Not Cowboy Bebop, not Fooly Cooly, not any of the other stuff that I really like. Big O is like just the first thing of like, oh yeah, that show. I didn't watch it, but it's the first thing that I think about. That's weird. Um, what else? What else? There is, like I said, Cowboy Bebop. Let's talk about Cowboy Bebop. Okay, so first off, right off the bat, I have actually never seen all of Cowboy Bebop. I've seen episodes here and there, but I've actually never watched like the whole series. Um, which is why when people mention the live action remake that was on Netflix and got canceled after I think one season, and people are like, "Oh man, I love this show. It's so like people like it." I've never seen it. I've never seen the live action. I just personally just I'm not a big fan of sci-fi. I don't dislike sci-fi. I'm not very inclined to indulge sci-fi. Um, really in any capacity. Like I I like it to an extent, but I don't know. I just never really could get into Cowboy Bebop. I didn't dislike it. I don't know. Same thing with like Ghost in a Shell or Ghost in the Shell or in a Shell. I don't remember. Ghost in the Shell. I remember seeing like maybe one episode, and I thought it was interesting because it looked different. Like these characters look almost real. Like the style of it was different, but I didn't really watch it very much. But with Cowboy Bebop, I've heard so many mixed opinions about the show. I don't have Netflix. Even if I had Netflix, I don't really have the time or patience to sit down and watch shows. It just goes to just the thing of like, I don't want to spend this much amount of time doing something unproductive. Like I'm not a workaholic in the slightest. I'm actually a very, very lazy individual. But when it comes to like watching a show, it's like I can't interact with this. So I just don't really want to sit down and indulge watching it, you know? Um, I don't know. I don't know. It got canceled. I think it's still canceled after one season. I saw I've only seen snippets. I saw one thing about it. I saw one scene. I think it's the scene where Ed meets Spike. And the one thing I saw was like the cinematography is really good. Like whoever was setting up the shots and the angles and the camera, they were on the ball. Like that scene at the very least, that scene looked really good. When it came to the lines and the acting, here's the thing, and I've always said this, and until something change, I'm always going to say it. I genuinely believe we are living in an age of unoriginality right now. Okay. Let me backtrack. Let me backtrack. Let me backtrack. There is original content. You know, it's just much more obscure. When it comes to Hollywood, we are living in the era of unoriginality. Why does Cowboy Bebop need a live action remake? Why does any anime need a live action remake? Why does any animated property need a live action remake? It's animated for a reason. The benefit of animation is you can do whatever you want. There's no limitations. You can use whatever color schemes you want. You can use whatever angles you want. You can set up a shot however you want. You can set the progression of the animation however you want, the smoothness of it, the surrealness of it. It's all animation is literally your brain thinks it, your hand makes it, and you just do it. That stuff just does not translate to live action. I'm sorry, but and I don't understand this fixation of let's make it real. We want real live action stuff all the time. Why? Why? I don't understand. I remember, and it doesn't seem like we learn our lesson too, because because all right, so my one of my favorite, no, I'd say, is it my favorite or one of my favorites? I'd say one of my favorites, at least top three. Favorite shows, favorite things, favorite forms of media of all time is Avatar: The Last Airbender. I remember that show came out when I was in middle school, and I didn't see it initially. Um, there was a kid in one of my classes who, I think he asked me like, "Hey, have you seen this show?" And I was like, "No, I've never seen it." And he was like, "Oh man, you should really check it out." So I was like, "Yeah, okay, whatever." And then the first thing I saw from that show was the scene where spoilers if you haven't seen Avatar: The Last Airbender, like really spoilers if you haven't seen that show. I highly 100% recommend, no matter what age you are, no matter what interests you have, watching Avatar: The Last Airbender, the animated show. Anyway, the first thing I saw was the scene where um, Azula did a lightning strike on Uncle Iroh or Ero, whatever, and the other, Aang and Katara and all of them were gonna go help, and Zuko is like, "Leave!" and then he fires like this fireball and like tells him to get away. Um, I remember that, and that I mean, there wasn't anything about it that like intrigued me initially. I think it might have just been the fact that it was like, this is like an anime, but it doesn't look quite like an anime. Like it is, but it's not. This seems smoother than any anime I've ever seen. Because at that time, I mean, anime is still like this, where there's just a lot of slow stuff. There's like a lot of slow animation, a lot of stills. Avatar was the big difference of like, wow, this is pretty fully animated. Like there's always something kind of happening. So, um, I kind of forgot where I was going with that. Uh, right. So anyway, Avatar, excellent, beautiful, S tier show. Then M. Night Shyamalan decided, hey, I'm gonna make this live action. And we all know, we all know what turned out from that. So it just doesn't work. Like I don't, who is asking for this? Like who is actually like demanding, hey, I want to see a live action version of an animated show. Like why? What what is this obsession with live action? Like is there like a cultural shift towards that when it comes to entertainment? Is it just like, does it reflect our the levels of technology we have, where it's like, well, you could just make it CGI and then, or you could just, the levels of like realistic representation are so high now. So now we just want to see everything be live action to represent real life. I don't know, bro. I don't know. I think they were trying to do like some live action Avatar, The Last Airbender show on Netflix, and that makes me sad. Um, but what was this whole tangent about? I can't keep a consistent thought. This is all just literally me regurgitating my conscience. Um, oh, shows on Adult Swim. Does anybody does anybody remember Fooly Cooly? FLCL. That show was my jam. I loved that show. I still love that show. I have a friend who lives in South America, and we haven't done this in a while. I need to contact her about that because it's fun when we do it. But we will watch anime together. We'll just watch it simultaneously, and then we'll just talk about it with each other. And we recently did that with Fooly Cooley, with the original show that was on Adult Swim, and then like they did some like not remakes, but like sequel, quote unquote sequels to that show. It's so insane, but I love it. It's got so much character to it. The animation is really good. It's got a very different tone than any show that I had ever seen before. So Fooly Cooley was definitely a favorite. Paranoia Agent was a huge favorite of mine. That show was just, oh my god. I had a bit of an obsession. I won't lie. I had an obsession with Paranoia Agent when I was a kid because it was just so. It was dark and it was like a psychological thriller, and it was just like it just go see Paranoia Agent. Also, that opening theme song is you hear that it's in your head forever. You can't listen to that song. You listen to it once and you will always remember that song. Um, what else was on Adult Swim? What else? Anime wise, Inuyasha. I remember watching Inuyasha, but I didn't like it very much. I thought as a kid, as a small child, I thought Kagome was a bit irritating. She was a little annoying. Um, what else was on? Whenever I think of Inuyasha, I think of Dororo. And they're not related. They're like totally different properties, but I actually haven't seen the rest of Dororo. Now that I think about it. I think I have like a few episodes I haven't seen, but I might just watch it over again from the beginning. That's a good one. Um, what else was on Adult Swim anime wise? Was Yu Yu Hakusho on Adult Swim? No, that was Toonami. Um, I think Bleach might have been on Adult Swim, but I didn't really watch Bleach. The only character from Bleach I liked was Gin Ichimaru. He was the only character I really cared about. Um, uh, so what else was on there? I don't know. There's some other shows, but yeah. And so speaking about anime in general, this is just the anime podcast. These themes that I talk about have no segues whatsoever. I'm talking about war in Ukraine to my I like to work out before I go to bed to I like these animes. Like this is completely stream of conscience. Um Speaking of anime though, I've seen very few anime now that I think about it. I would not consider myself an otaku or a weeb in any way. Not in like any derogatory sense. Like I really there's only a few shows and manga and anime that I will indulge. Specifically, I like Grappler Baki. I like Hajime no Ippo. Well, actually, all right. I liked Hajime no Ippo. The anime is really good. The manga was good. I don't. All right, spoilers. More spoilers. If you have not, um, I'm not gonna really spoil much, but there is a very, excuse me. There's a very significant um plot twist that changes the trajectory of storytelling in Hajime no Ippo that, in my opinion, makes it less engaging. I'm just gonna say that. Um, I tried, I tried really, really hard to get into One Piece. I tried. I really did. I tried. I've tried multiple times. I just I just can't get into it. Like I've read the manga up to Skypiea, right? I skipped so much of the Alabasta saga. I skipped so much of that. I skipped like most of the dialogue. I didn't care. I think that all right, so I like because I'm a simpleton, I like simple storytelling. I do. And just because you like simple storytelling doesn't make you a simpleton, but I like simple stories. I don't need a huge world to get lost in. I really don't. I don't like long winded storytelling. I really don't. I don't like stuff that goes on and on and on and on. My favorite shows and my favorite animes and really just anything, the things I remember are the things that are short. I remember short stories and what happens in short stories much clearly or much clearer than I remember anything I read from a novel. Um, that goes with anything like quotes that are short stick in my mind much better than longer quotes, just anything. Um, One Piece's world is just too big for me. It's just too much. It's like I don't I don't care. Like it's I sorry, but I don't care. There's just too much for me personally. If you love One Piece, if that's your jam, if you're just a huge One Piece fan, great. That's excellent. I don't know how you keep up with all of it. I don't. I just can't. I just get to the point where I'm like I it's funny because I'm not a big fan of just too much dialogue. But I like the things I remember in shows and stuff. I remember big action scenes, obviously. But then I remember like interactions between characters. Those stick out in my mind. And, One Piece characters interact with each other, obviously. But there's sometimes where I'm kind of like, do we need to jump into the next thing this quick? Can we have just like a chill saga? Just like a chill out saga where it's like, all right, they're just gonna be hanging out, just chilling, just shooting the shit, just relaxing. You know? I don't know. Do you know? Because I don't know. um, yeah, I couldn't get into One Piece. I've tried getting into Naruto multiple times. Can't really get into it. I don't, and I'm mentioning all these like older shows because I don't know what people watch anymore. When I said like with the situation in Europe, which is honestly affecting most of the world in some capacity, in one way or another, you don't really know about it unless you live under a rock. I live under a rock. I really don't know what is happening most of the time. The only reason I'm like up to date on stuff that's happening, in Ukraine and stuff is because I get most of my news from Wiki News, and then sometimes Reddit, and then sometimes like other news sources. Just so I can have like a vague understanding of like, okay, this is basically what's happening. But I live under a rock. I don't know what anime is popular anymore. I don't know what is popular anymore. Period. Honestly, is Billie Eilish still popular? I don't know. By the time this comes out, maybe she won't be. Maybe she will be. I don't know. Ugh. But I think I've always been that way. I've never really cared about what was popular. I never really cared about pop culture. Like I'd have the things I like, and then I just like those things. Um, there was something I was gonna say about in the vein of anime, but I can't quite remember. Can't quite remember. Um, just trying to think of there was another topic I wanted to bring up, but I just got so caught up in this anime tangent and this this live action remake stuff. When is that gonna change? Like, because it does. You know what? I don't know if it will change because as long as people go to watch it, they're gonna keep making it. When is the next big like cultural phenomenon thing gonna happen in media? Like Harry Potter status. What is that thing happening now? Do I just not know about like some big crazy huge book or some big crazy huge show? I guess Squid Game might be that, but that's not like phenomenon. That's just like, oh, that's a new thing. I don't know. I wonder what that thing's gonna be. Hmm. But you know what's funny? As much as I'm talking about like I hate live action remakes. I don't like the live action. I like animation. As much as I'm complaining about that, there are some live action stuff that I would like to see animated. You can't tell me you wouldn't be interested in watching an animated Harry Potter movie. You can't look me in the eyes and well, you can't look me in the eyes, period. But you can't look at this little picture on the screen if you're watching whatever. You can't tell me you wouldn't want to see that. If you're a fan of Harry Potter, you can't tell me you wouldn't want to see it animated. Because think of what they could do with it. You know, there's only so much you can do with live action. Unless you're going to make it CGI, and then it's just going to be extremely expensive. So, I don't know. I guess, you know, if I can want this property to be made animated, then people can like a property being live action. And I think my thing with animation just comes from like, as a kid, I mostly indulged animated content. Like most of what I watched was animated. I was a very big. I like cartoons. I draw cartoons. I don't know how to animate. Like I know how to animate. I just don't do it. But I just enjoy that kind of stuff. So maybe I just have a affinity, which bring it full circle. Y'all thought I was just rambling, just vomiting words. Coming full circle now. Those sort of things stick with you when you're a child, you know? Now, I don't sit around watching cartoons anymore, but I still have an affinity for animation because I indulged so much of it as a child. So, is there a lesson here? Is there a theme? Is there a motif? Maybe. Just who you are as a child tends to bleed into who you become as an adult, whether you acknowledge it or you want it to or not. You know, those things, they carry over. Um, yeah, I think I think that's gonna be all I've got to talk about this time. Yeah. So anyway, just to kind of close this out. Um, thank you for listening. I actually don't even have a timer, so I don't even know how long this podcast has been going, but whatever. Thank you for listening to the Better Late Than Never podcast. Once again, I just want to just maybe take a moment of silence for um, what's happening in Ukraine, all the lives that have been lost, the situation going on over there, um, the difficulties and things like that are happening that on both sides. So just gonna take a little pause here for that. Yeah, and of course, As I take that pause, my mom coughs in the background. But anyway, thank you for listening. Um, I don't know when this is going to come out, but I've got some content coming out. I'm trying to be a little more productive with my schedule. So essentially, I'm just sort of just planning my days out a little bit more carefully. Um, but yeah, take care, be safe, and you know,